Welcome back to the channel. Today's going to be the second video in the series of videos that I'm doing about installing wiring harnesses into the early Porsche 911, 912 models. So that's from 65 to 68, the short wheelbase stuff. Today's going to be about the battery cable. So we got an original one here. We'll take a look at it and how Porsche made it. And then we've got a new one and we'll go about putting it in the car. So here we go. Hope you enjoy. What we're looking at here is a original cable from, I think it's from a 65. I can't remember. It might be a 66. But there's just a couple of things I want to point out. The first one is the factory actually tinned or soldered their endings so they wouldn't fray. So that's an interesting detail. They also put a sheathing over the cable. So it's a PVC sheathing. It's a really tight fit too. So you can see where it's on the cable right there. But it's just a PVC tube that they put over it to add extra protection, so it is a little detail. And then their starter eyelet's pretty much standard, so there's nothing special there. So next, let's take a look at a new one. And here's a new one. The ends are tinned or soldered just like they were from the factory, so they won't fray. And then I've added the PVC tubing just like they do from the factory. One thing I do a little different than they did is that I take an adhesive lined heat shrink tube and I put it on the end and I put it over the PVC tube so it makes a watertight connection there, because that is exposed to the elements. It's up underneath the car and it keeps out water. All right, here we are at the back of the car underneath it. So this is what it looks like. So you got a bunch of holes back here. So this one on the bottom, this car being on its right hand side, would be for the wiring harness. This is a fake harness that I've just got mocked up in there. But then this hole right here, the one right above it, right to its left, is for the starter. So we're going to feed the starter up through here and get it into the tube that goes up through the secondary tube that goes through the tunnel. I'll show that here in a minute. I'll have to freestyle with the camera, so forgive the jiggliness. But once we get that in, there's a boot that goes over that. I'll show that here in a few minutes. And the cable will come out and it'll go over the torsion bar tube. If you remember on the install video that I did on the wiring harness comes under the torsion tube, but the battery cable goes over. So it's going to go over and then come through here and then into the connector that we talked, or the wiring harness tabs that we talked about in the previous video. And then it would end up off screen over here to the right, connected to the starter. All right, so let me try to show the tube that we're going to try to get it into. Okay, so now I'm freestyling with the video camera, so please bear with me while it's a little bit shaky. But we're going to try to see where this goes. So remember, the wiring harness is glossy and black, right? So you see it going through the tunnel there, but there's a sub-tunnel. I don't know if you can see that. I might try to get a better picture, but there's a sub-tunnel, and I talked about it on the install video. So you've got the harness already installed in the sub-tunnel, right? As you can see it there. So now you're going to get the battery cable to go up in there with that thing. So I highly recommend that if you're doing this, you're doing a complete restoration, that you put the harness in first and then put the battery cable in after that. If you want to know why, then go back to the previous install video of the wiring harness and you'll get a little bit of an idea. So let me see if I can show you that little bit up in there, that little sub-tunnel a little bit better. Alrighty, here we go. A little bit of cinematography magic, right? I guess. So I hope this doesn't look too bad on video, but you're trying to get the battery cable to fall right beside this guy. And he's going to go up in that sub-channel. That would be a sub-channel. So you want to try to get it up through there. So let's do it. Before starting to put the harness up into the hole there, I do want to talk about a couple little things. So you've got three different pieces that you're going to have to end up installing on the harness. This one is a grommet that goes right there, right? So it seals it off so that there's no moisture that gets up in there. This is going to be the boot that goes over your starter connection, so it'll go on there pretty much last. I guess you can put it on last. And then this little guy is a grommet that goes through the firewall up by the pedal cluster that where the harness, or not the harness, but the cable exits through the passenger compartment into by the gas tank and then to the battery cable, or to the battery area. So we'll install that here in a minute. So one of the things you're going to see, so on this guy, let's talk about this guy. This guy you'd want to go ahead and install on the cable before you even start messing with it. So I'm going to do that, so you'll see it on there. But I would put that on first, just because you don't want to put it on from the end of the cable that connects to the starter, because you got that big eyelet and you would never get it through that little tiny hole. You might, but you'd probably rip it. So, all right. And here I am on the inside of the car with the cable starting to come through. So this is how I pull it through from here. Eventually it starts to come through here, not there, but here with the harness, right? Like I said, this is just a dummy mock-up harness for demo purposes. And then it's going to end up going through this connector like we showed in the last video. And then it'll come up here. Let me get this situated. So it'll come up through here, through there. And that little hole right there is where it exits to go up to the front trunk area and to the battery. So, and that is where that little grommet right here goes. All right. So the easiest thing to do is to put this grommet on first, and then to feed the cable through there. And remember, if it's kind of sticky, that you got to hang on to it. You can't drop it. Remember, if it's kind of sticky, baby powder can be your friend. Or, you know, even cable slickum that they sell at Lowe's or Home Depot. That'll work. But that stuff can be kind of messy. So I don't really like using that unless I have to. But yeah, so next we're going to put that little grommet in. And voila, we had some elves that jumped out and installed that real quick. But no, actually I went up into the front and installed it through where the gas tank would go. So you could do it from up in here, but it's probably just as easy to do it from the front. It's a little tight up under here, up in the front when you got the gas tank out. It's really not that big of a deal. So that's what it looks like. So you just want to start feeding the battery cable through that. So here we are with the battery cable pretty much installed at this point. So we've got it running up through there. We've got it going through our grommet. Take you up front and show you that. So here we are up in the front trunk area. So you can get a reference point. Fuse panel would be up there. So it comes through the wall right there. Pretty nice little pretty grommet and everything. And then it comes into the holders that we talked about on the last video. So these are a little bit long. These metal tabs in here are pretty short. So you could actually take a pair of scissors and snip these off a little bit. Just trim them up. You can see that they're a little bit too big. But your cable would come up here into the battery area, and then you would hook into your battery. So up in there, the cable. We'll go to the back here in a second, but you know you're going to have to play with it a little bit. You're going to either need to connect it to the starter or connect it to the battery and get the length or the proportions right. How much to the front, how much to the back, so on and so forth. So we'll go in the back and take a look at that. This ultimately is what it ends up looking like. So it comes through its grommet that goes under the back of the tunnel, and then it's going to come up over the torsion bar here, and then it's going to go back into its little holder here, and then to the other holder over here. And of course the wiring harness would be going through here too, but it would come out at the starter. And then the last thing that you want to do would be to put the protective boot on there that goes over the end of the cable. So just slide it on there like so. Expose the starter lug, and then you would just put it over the top of the connection once you've got it done like so. All right, so that dramatic and riveting cinematography right there was how to do the battery cable. The next thing I'm planning on doing is some of the stuff about underneath the dash. The wiring diagrams from Porsche are kind of vague in that area. They don't really show they show it, but you just kind of have to dig it out and how they do it. So based off of a request, I'm going to do that next. So if anybody has a request for seeing something in particular, please put it down in the comments or email me directly. And also subscribe to the channel. That way you'll know that when the next video comes out. So thanks. Appreciate you tuning in, and I hope it was helpful, and see you soon.